感じですよね。
大変ですよね。
いい感じですよね。ゆりんさんの英語は可愛いですよね。放送始まった。
or lecture in full in English, but I may have some sort of difficulties in the middle, but you guys will kindly follow. And how many of you guys are kind of first timer in Seoul or in South Korea? This time, 1, 2, only 2. Oh, okay, all right. Where are you guys from? England? Australia. Australia. Interesting. I see. And you from Italy. Not first time in South Korea. Second. Got it. That's good. That's good. And you guys from Turkey? Oh, both. All right. That's good.
World Cup losers.
World Cup. So I think you guys didn't have dinner, right? Yes. So I'll try to finish in 3 hours. And it's not. So I'm gonna actually, you guys seen this image from the poster maybe on Instagram, right? And I want to start with this image. Actually, I don't want to start with this image of the entire pavilion, but I want to start with this kind of small picture that you guys see the log. It's a large log that was in this center of the pavilion. If you that one. So this one is a part of the pavilion. It's not the entire image, or it came. Some people that start the architecture from final image and imagination, but I just started with this image. This is the kind of old, rotten log base from the wood sawmill that I saw in like 2 years ago or something, and that was about to kind of actually be thrown away. So I actually asked them to protect and preserve, and maybe I can use it later for some purpose. And I'll come back to this image later in this presentation. And I want to use these 2 words to kind of frame this entire presentation. I'm actually planning to not to give a architectural portfolio presentation, but to be more like a framework for understanding Korean architecture and how we actually got here. So for the former is temporary frames, right, to hold the concrete that is poured into, right? So former is a mentality, a way of working that I'm framing in that way. So you first imagine in former manner, you first imagine the final form, right? And then build a temporary frame around the final shape, and the material is poured into it, and then form is removed and thrown away. So in that sense, in this construction work, and you guys always come up with the form first, final form. So to me, the final form is very early determined by this construction technique, and the form comes first and material follows. And the framework is different. A frame is not a mold. A frame is made of parts, right? Frame itself. It's made of beams, posts, and joists, rafters, and each one is part of the construction. And it's not thrown away after its completion. So you have to decide what comes first and what system what and what is connected to one another, right? So you have to think about it before the completion of architecture. So form is still important, but it does not always have to be, upfront. It does not always have to come at the first time of your design. So let me start with something very simple. So the two words are tonight I'm presenting as a kind of guide for understanding how Korean architecture was developed. It's a kind of conceptual frame and the mentality. And let me start with this something very simple image. If you fly over Seoul or outside Seoul, you can easily notice that Seoul or the country is very green. We don't have rocky mountains. Mostly our mountains are covered with trees. They're very green. It's not common. Yeah. Some of the parts in the world have rocky mountain, brown mountains, all kinds of different mountains. But we used to see these green mountains, right? But this is actually not a present condition, the normal condition. And 60 or 70 years ago, many of these mountains were bare, almost bare. So if we ask the elementary school students draw mountains in 1960s, they would draw these mounds and color with the brown crayon or a color pencil. So Korea's reforestation is often described as world record on Guinness Book, I think. So described as one of the major environmental success of 20th century. And what I actually think, I think that is true. And here's the strange part: the forest came back and trees came back, but wood did not come back to actually architecture. So Korean cities are concrete, right? The buildings you see in this image is all 99% made out of concrete. Schools, apartments, the office buildings, and individual houses, all made out of single-family houses, are all made out of concrete. Even today, timber structure is still relatively marginal. It's like if we count yearly, the entire GFA, the gross floor area of a new construction, and classify, the category into the construction type, then 98% out of concrete, 2%, only 2% is wood. So why did the trees return but not to the buildings? This is not only a technical question, it is also a historical question. And I want to start with 1 year, 1967. And of course, history never begins with a single year, but this year gives a really good split screen of our country. So if you look at these two juxtaposed images, same country, same government, even same president, right? If you guys have, anyway, you guys know President Park, Chung-min Park? Have you guys ever heard of it? He was a kind of a dictator, but he made a kind of leap forward development of our country after Korean War. He was a dictator, but we almost the same historical moment in 1967. Korea Forest Service on the left has formed, established, and the state begins It's a massive project of reforestation, basically planting trees on one side. And on the right side, it's a Seonsanga. You guys ever visited? Yeah, Seonsanga. So it's a kind of massive concrete structure that was opened in 1967 in the middle of Seoul, a huge reinforced concrete mega structure, right? And Korea begins planting trees and pouring concrete at the same time, exactly at the same time. Both were modern, both were very urgent, both were very national project. So it's very top-down project from the government to every single household. But they did not really hold this image in your mind. For me, much of the story already kind of pre-scripted into these two split screen. So the planning side in the early 1960s, after the beginning of Forest Service, many Korean mountains were severely damaged, and they started to actually recover our mountains in our country. There were, you guys probably know, there were colonial extraction from Japanese, right? And also, the fuel, right? There was an everyday need for the firewood. It's a survival. Also, there was a poverty, and there was an everyday need, right? So, when the Forest Service opened in 1967, planting trees was not actually just a kind of romantic, nostalgic, the ritual kind of thing. It was a kind of connected to our survival, actual survival. And it was connected to fuel as well. It was connected to reconstruction of the entire country. The forest became a national project. It's really hard to find this kind of a national forest project in any other world in this modern age. And it also became a national ritual. Every year we call it Arbor Day, Shingogil, right? And it was actually designated as Arbor Day in 1950 or something, as far as I can remember. But after Korean War, President Park Chung-hee, he really took it seriously, the Arbor Day. So politicians, school children, families, the institutions, everyone in this country planted trees. So the forest was not just a nature; it was a kind of the how we imagine the recovery of the entire country. It was a kind of symbol. So if you look at the foreign side, you saw this picture on the left prior to a couple of pages. In the city, the language of modernization was different. It was reinforced concrete. Concrete was fast. Concrete was permanent. Concrete was, it holds a meaning of modernization. So concrete could be repeated, and it also could be operated in a national level infrastructure, right? Like the photos on the right. And these two happened in also 1967. That's why I'm interested here. Yeah. So schools, apartments, public buildings, infrastructure, all these could be produced through concrete frame and slabs. And of course, with concrete comes formwork, and you cast a slab, you cast a frame, you repeat the system. Much of the skyline outside its, the window was produced through concrete and produced through this logic. Form is imagined first, and the material is poured. Same sequence. So while the mountains are being replanted, and the city was being cast. And it becomes more interesting when it comes to tradition, right? The question of tradition. Even tradition was often reproduced in conflict. It was in 1967 again. This is a proposal for National Museum in 1967. Yeah. The competition brief basically asked for this. Give us our appearance of Korean heritage architecture, but make it modern. So use the concrete. Specifically, actually, scripted in the competition brief. Use concrete, but give us the image of the tradition, but use concrete. Basically, you give us the image of wood, but without the wood. So it's kind of weird, right? So this is important. Wood was still powerful as an image. It still carried the cultural memory, cultural meaning, right? It still holds those representational value of tradition. But the actual material logic, the joinery, right? Joinery or the material sequence, the carpenter's intelligence, they were not welcomed in that era. So that was not considered as a modern. So again, 1967 is kind of again. We see this even more clearly in Gwanghwamun, very south Gwanghwamun, the Southgate, is that right? Southgate, the Gyeongbu Palace. So the great gate of the main palace was rebuilt in reinforced concrete. The curved roof, the brackets, the profile of timber structure, all cast in concrete. Very cool, right? So in terms of this talk, this is a very powerful image. The image of wood produced through formwork. So timber tradition translated into a concrete method, right? It's like a Parthenon temple. You guys heard of it? Probably from history course or lecture or something. Parthenon temple was a representation of wood, right? Wood architecture, the column, those triglyph and all those are representation of wood beams and stuff, right? So it's very similar. So I do not actually say this only to criticize it. It belongs to specific historical moments of our architecture industry, right? And then there were pressure of speed, of course, there were pressure of politics, and there were pressure of symbolism, but it shows something clearly. Wood survived as representation, but not as construction. Anybody kind of other, like this is similar images, but they were precast concrete components for traditional Korean houses, columns, brackets on top of the column that look like the timber elements. So actually, recently I took these photos, and that's kind of interesting. So the image on the left, until a certain datum, it's all concrete, right? But cast in place, on-site concrete, basically. And above that datum, color datum, it's all precast elements because of the complexity of the geometry. So the precast elements you see in this image, it's all come together on site on one day, and they assemble on site. And all the gaps were actually made up by the cement-based mortar. That's a kind of construction technique. That's one, two. That's another one. But and here's a kind of deepest irony. many actually do not know this, but would never left the construction site. Look at almost any concrete construction site in Korea during these days, during this decade. It is full of wood, former panels, scaffoldings, props, construction props, and etc. Right? Temporary supports. Wood was everywhere, but it was there as something temporary support. Something temporary, something that helps concrete take shape, something that disappears when the concrete hardens. So wood helped concrete become architecture, and then it was thrown away. For me, this is not just a construction detail. It is almost portrait of some sort of mentality. Yeah, not just a kind of representation; it's a mentality. So formwork and framework that I'm thinking is kind of mentality of making. So that actually, two words, form is very important, right? But they actually come from an opposite direction. So I think it's different, even though they eventually have a form, but buildings know the difference. So the material was present, but it was not allowed to become architecture. It was there to serve the form, the wood, and then disappear. This kind of mentality also reached the rural side of Korea. Like Korean students know that the Sema movement. Also, in the 70s, the New Village movement sent cement to the box of cement to the rural countries, and roads, walls, bridges, and the roofs, they were replaced in cement-based material. What's ironical is in the forest, trees are welcomed and trees are protected, but in the city or in the villages, trees were something to overcome, right? Two different mentalities, but the very same moment of history in Korea. So I think wood was not economically absent either in the 1970s. You guys know we were the #1 country to plywood export country. #1, not in Asia, in the world, for like 9 years or something. So back then, the Korea became one of the world's largest major plywood exporters. The wood was processed, wood was industrialized already. So wood was connected to export and economic development. So the wood existed in several forms. It was a national resource of the forestry. So it's not true that wood was not ever industrialized during 1960s or 70s. It's already there, but we didn't use it. We only used it as a scaffolding or the former, basically. We already had a product, but we didn't use it. We didn't celebrate it as architectural material. But the one thing is, did not really become was shared architectural language of wood. And when it arrived the 1980s, now I want to be a little bit fair to my own discipline. Right? The architects were not simply passive in this story. Around late 1980s and 1990s, a younger generation of Korean architects, like Korean students know Sasan group, right? 4.5 group, I don't know how to translate. 43 groups, I don't know. But they actually formed a group and they make architecture intellectually very serious. They wrote they formed groups, they debated the autonomy of architecture discipline, our discipline. They were trying to protect architecture from national pressure, national development as a construction logic, and also state symbolism, also from commercial pressure. And I do respect those, our someday, the upper generations, but their words were often metaphysical and beautiful and powerful, like emptiness, the courtyard, the void, memory, those kind of very conceptual words. I think contemplation. But look at what is often missing is material, technology. It's all very integral part of architecture, but they intentionally didn't actually bring those words into their discourse. So architecture became intellectually rich, but sometimes materially very thin. So we didn't talk about any of the material things. We talk about space. We talk about logic of space, but we didn't talk about how to make actually space. So now that the trees have grown, the difficult part of this era is that this was the era that National Forestry Service started to actually use wood. So they had enough wood already, 1990s or 80s and 90s. They started to use them in any industry, but actual architecture industry don't welcome those wood as a material. And they talk about space, the void, not void. But yeah. So the architecture was turning in more towards the language of space and theory, and the two sides, they really did not meet with each other. And when it comes to 2000, in Korea, architecture industry, sustainability, the concept of sustainability arrived, but often it arrived as a score. From the early 2000 green certification system became the form. Installation values, those thermal values, energy equipment, certified materials. But actually, they were also only talking about performance points. Of course, these things are really important, matter in actually architecture, but many architects experience sustainability less as a design question, and more as a checklist, So, and here is the paradox. In the decade when architecture became much more sustainable and much more green, wood in Korea still remains mostly outside mainstream structural practice or architectural practice. So these are two parallel lines. Here's the story on one slide. On one line, the forest, the planting, recovery, management, sustainability, carbon neutrality, right? These days. Remarkable success story, like a miracle of the forestation in the world. But on the other line, it's a timeline: architecture, concrete modernization, architectural autonomy, without much future thinking. Green as for, and now timber as just a translation. What it means to translation is a lot of actually wood architecture, timber architecture nowadays are very promoted by the nation these days, like 2020s. But we became it took about decades to become fluent in concrete language. as a country. But to me, it feels like it's just these days the built timber architecture in Korea, recently built timber architecture is a kind of translation of concrete structure. Just the material painted in wood, almost same. So same ramen systems, glass slabs, etc. So I think it's first we have to translate. When we first want to learn, when someone wants to learn foreign language, you have to translate first, right? Before you learn grammar and all those things, deeper into the structure of the language, you have to translate things. So I think now is the translation time. So concrete structure translated to the wood, but not actually. We are thinking with wood, just making wood work. So let me define former again, not as a technique, but as a mentality. Former begins with the desired form. The form is already imagined in the architect's mind, in the rendering, in the competition image, in the diagram of the whole. As a student, you better familiar with these concepts, right? Then structure, material, and the detail are asked to help realize that form. It's a kind of serving the form, right? Everything in the center of thought, center of the design thought, form is one of the most celebrated things in our discipline and discourse in form of thinking. So material enters a decision that has already been made. Critical decisions are already made, and then material comes later, follows. So form, the material follows form. Details often arrives late as a kind of finishing problem. This is not only about concrete. Many of us design industry design in this way, regardless of material. First the image, then the form, then we ask structure and detail to catch up. Hey, catch up. Yeah. Then the form. I know this is because I was actually also trained in this way when I was practicing. I was practicing architecture for like 15 years, and then I went to university recently. But so framework begins from the other end. It begins with parts. What is the unit? What's the member? What can one person carry actually? How weight? How much weight does one can carry? What can the material actually spend? Because there's a kind of certain length, and it's a production length that's already determined before we start designing something, and it has to fit in the truck. So what comes after? What goes up first? How two pieces meet? These are small questions, but not actually unimportant. Not a secondary question in architecture. To generate eventually space. So in framework thinking, the form is still real. It still matters, but it comes through a organization of parts. Sometimes form is a kind of residue of a process, right? It's not the form comes first. The form is a kind of a residue of the process, residue of a organization, residue of material thinking, right? So I will use this phrase a few times maybe in this presentation. Not because the form is unimportant, but because form can be earned differently in framework thinking. So let's make the concepts a little bit more simple. First question, where does design begin? In form of thinking, design often begins with an image of the whole. It's true. It is true. And then we look for techniques to support for it. In concrete structure, mostly design, image comes first, and the details. Oh, someone says on Instagram, someone saw images, nice image design, final product. Oh, it's really good, has a good detail. It means details are very secondary to support forms, not question itself. It's just a kind of a cosmetic makeup of the concrete form. But then we look for techniques, right? In frame of thinking, design can begin with per, a member, a module, a kind of rule. So spacing, like 18-inch on center, 16-inch on center, that kind of thing. A module, a rule joint, repeated action, it's kind of parametry. But anyway, both approaches can produce form, but they arrive from opposite direction, as I previously talked about it. And I think buildings can feel the difference really as a final product. So it's the same thing. I'll just I'm almost getting hungry a little bit. And I know this is kind of cliche, right? You guys know this image? Remember this image? Longines, the pyramid hub. You guys remember? In modern architecture history course or something. It was drawn in 17 something, 18th century, late 18th centuries. First in France, and then translated into English in late 1700s. And then so many people back then it was like a domino frame image by Corbu, almost like a symbol of architecture that dictated entire era of architecture theory or history. But I want to actually look at it a little bit different. The 4 trunks, 4 columns, beams laid on top of those kind of 4 columns, a roof of branches. It is usually read as an origin myth of architecture, but tonight I want to read it more like literally. It is also a diagram of assembly, right? 4 columns come first, and then beams laid on top, and then later blah 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 blah, right? It is also a diagram, right? So a few decades later, have you guys heard of David Gilly, the architect, the German architect, back in the 17 something. You guys know Friedrich Schinkel? Friedrich Schinkel in German architect, neoclassical architect, the kind of father of German architect, modern architect. But anyway, these were not abstract theory books. David Gilly published this book called Landbaukunst in 1797, and so it was about how buildings go up, how construction can be drawn, taught, and repeated. So all the wood construction, wood architecture was starting to be a part of knowledge of construction as a form of repeated or replicated form. So architecture was taught not only as image or composition, but as a language of members and joint from these kind of books. And later Godfrey Sandberg kind of followed this kind of tradition. So then this logic becomes radically practical of course, in America. balloon framing, standard lumber nails, simple repeated members, and this book, William Bell on the left, the carpentry made easy in 1857 showed exactly that world. Member sizes, nailing sequences, wall raising step by step, like a manual, very practical manual of wood architecture framework. What I like about it is that it does not make actually framework mysterious. It turns framework into a working language. A continent was built by people following this instruction. You guys see this image on the very far right? It's a kind of temporary housing for the refugee. When the major great earthquake hit San Francisco back in 1906 or 7, and they need a lot. The third of the entire city was kind of collapsed and it became nothing. So, obviously refugees, a lot of people lost their homes. So the balloon framing, the carpentry balloon framing, light member framing, they actually were used by young kids. Even kids could build it. Everyone who can hold the hammer and nail, and they could actually theoretically build a house. It's a very democratic, right, construction. You see. So I think I will say this in one sentence: the whole world of architecture was produced not from unique images in this manner, but from repeatable instructions. That is not romantic craft, or there's not certain master of form. Also, it is industrial, manual, very ordinary, democratic, practical, and for that reason, I think it is still relevant framework thinking. Today, we use different words: CLT, glulam, CNC, prefabrication, etc. OSC, offset construction, prefab. We call these new technologies, but many of them ask an old question: what is the unit? What is the joint? And what is the sequence of a construction in architecture? And what has to be decided before anything is made? What has to be decided? What has to be decided before anything is designed? In that sense, the old question is still alive. What do you think? What do you make first when you design? When you do architecture, what do you make first? And where does it go? Very simple question. Not a kind of big theoretical, hypothetical, metaphysical question. Very simple. The tools have changed, but the architectural judgment is still ours. So now I want to show a few of my projects. It's not great. They're not great, but anyway. So actually, each project is a kind of question to myself. I'm still, as a young architect, I'm still learning the design. So this is the Tahoe cabin first project. My first project, first ever as an independent architect. Good. I'll go fast in 20 minutes. So it's in South Lake Tahoe. Have you ever heard South Lake Tahoe? Lake Tahoe in America. It's in San Francisco, in California state. And it's kind of a 3-hour away from San Francisco in most direction. It's a really good vacation spot for San Francisco people. It takes only 3 hours, and it has everything: casino, skiing in winter, casino and skiing, and in summer it's a water sports, camping, backpacking, things like that, hiking. So it also in winter site has a heavy snow. It wasn't a large project, it was an Airbnb cabin. One of my friends asked for me to design it so he could develop. He was a developer and also construction general contractor as well. So he was using his father's money. He poured everything out of his father's pocket, retirement. So I actually start with this kind of a image, and this was a very important first step to design. So often we think about the property lines as a real, serious, real, actual physical line, but I sometimes it doesn't matter, right? And of course, property line defines financial, legal boundaries of architecture, but it's hypothetical, never exists, right? So I erased the property boundary from the drawing, and then started to actually see the space between those trees. I started actually seeing trees on site as an isolated object. So this was the plan. There were 11 existing trees, and I started to build a house through these trees. So often we just kind of scrape off the site, right? Oh, nice. That's good. Straight off the trees and build a boxy, modern, nice-looking house. But I started to actually use the trees as a kind of design constraint. So I actually really thoroughly prepared the setback lines from all those trees and started to build my own setback line and come up with this plan. The plan is not a kind of series of rooms, it's a kind of flow of program. And I did not use any of the swing door to accentuate the continuity of the entire space. I only used a sliding door with a lot of gaps from the bottom of the floor. And this is a very interesting picture and diagram as well. So actually, this region had a special zoning code so it's a heavily wooded area. Natural preservation, all those things come to the zoning code, special zoning code that. So if you have a architecture development, you have to measure the trees on site at a certain height. So it's called a DBH, diameter at breast height. It's a kind of 45 centimeters from the ground, and you measure the diameter of the trees on site. And then if you exceed certain inches, then you cannot actually cut down. But if you are under those certain diameter, you do whatever you want. But we have to actually submit a form of tree removal, and then it has to match the survey of the actual, the data of the site data of the trees, the diameter of trees on site. So I actually started to utilize that rule as a kind of reverse design alibi. I'll use that. I'll accept that, and that line, it's a kind of deadline for the trees, right? And that's a deadline, the 18 inches. And if you are under something, then these to be thrown away, but I used it as a design element. So that line actually remained in a very odd line in this photo. So that actually became a very serious and important architectural data to determine the height of the benches, height of the the window, height of TV on screen on the wall, and height of firewall. And I'll show the pictures later. That data, and these are the process to find the form. Maybe, oh, this is very formally driven, but not quite. Actually, I come up with the plan first. It was very hard to find that fact in between those trees. And then there was a special, building code that I had to abide by a certain angle of the roof, right? Because of the heavy snow region. So that angle, when that specific angles meet the irregular plans, it's a kind of nightmare to solve all the kind of flatness, and everything comes to one point. And then I used the first time, not the first time, but grasshopper script to be sure that even though it looks kind of irregular, all those green angles, it's called raptor takeout angles, are same identical to with green with each other, and reds are red, the same angles. So no warped surfaces, every plane must be flat. These are the rules that I set up before I find those final planes. It's not dramatic, but I do not really know what to say, but I wrote 3 rules and try to follow them. Those minimize raptor takeout angles, no warped surfaces, and etc. Because it's made out of framework. So wood is flat stick, right? So these are the final the wood frames that is supporting those kind of red plans. Construction sequence. This was my first project. I basically throw myself to the sorry. I was getting in show. So in framework construction, everything is alive actually. So everything has to be calculated, right? Everything comes in part to the side. Each member, you have to think about each member, how to meet with each other, and the things that I talked about previously. And these are American cats on site. These are cats, black cats. Yeah, it's kind of crazy, right? They are kind of hanging around outside. It's a wild animal. For real. So I had to actually really be far away and zoom in to take it. So this is the interior photo. You see the data that I talked about, those 18-inch DB8 data. So it became the guideline for the handicap, the outlets, and these. You can see the right, and windows and stuff. And a photo. So actually, it was featured in the Tesla commercial. Yeah, back in 1922 or something. Elon Musk got even the Tesla green. So after Tao, I kept asking, can this way of working return to Korea, not as an imported, timber aesthetic, not as a kind of foreign language or a foreign image of timber project, but as a way of thinking inside Korean, our industry. So this is my first project in Korea back in 2022. Forest Edge was the first building is a cafe, and the building behind is a large, big residential. It's in Kawamoto, if you guys know. So this one, before it became, the saving the trees. I'm not the environmentalist, but as a kind of an attitude or act of making, I started to maintain those attitudes. So I walked through the site, about 1,600 square meter site, like tree by tree in the forest. I marked what could, be saved, what could stay. So the development happening in Korean countryside or rural side often happens very quickly, and land is clear, the site is level, then architecture begins. We actually cannot, intervene those processes as an architect. That's a law, kind of law, divided very clearly. But actually, I asked a client for me to actually hop in those processes, pre-architecture stage, and started to walk in the forest and, those things. I don't know, but this is not a design act, or I didn't actually consciously imagine something that is useful design-wise, but I really hope and I believe these kind of attitude remains, and certainly at some point it comes out to the surface. And these were the kind of maps of trees that I actually drew after this kind of useless walking in like 3 hours or something. Those kind of sight line, the DBH line, also translated into the Korean version. One detail from that attitude is the concrete table. The cafe floor sits kind of 705 millimeter, 0.75 meters, right? Good at math, but below the original ground. So inside the building, I wanted to keep one piece of that old ground as a level, right? So, the concrete table at plus 750. So you see, it's the same level. So I actually wanted to make it as a theoretically, just actually my own forest. So actually, after those kind of construction sequence, the concrete table, we kind of I poured actually the original forest soils and moss and things like that, bars on site. Structurally, also, it's a part of mat foundation. Conceptually, it is the old surface of the forest held inside the new building. So even the concrete here was asked to kind of remember, that was important to me, like a 18-inch line to the top. So where actually wood is good and concrete is bad, it's a project where every material has to carry certain meaning and certain role and position. And this is a kind of also kind of framework move. I think of this project through units of building. The two buildings share one triangular. Anyway, I try. Oh, okay. Equilateral triangle. You guys know equilateral triangle. The two. So this one is an equilateral triangle that is exactly at 20 feet. It shows the actual production size of the wood as a material product. I try to actually intentionally keep that 20 feet as much as possible. The main members use the standard North American production, also the interval as well. You guys know plywood size? Do you guys know anyone? Plywood size? Memorize? No? Oh, okay. 4x8. 합판. Plywood, 4x8. So that means 4 feet by 8 feet, right? So that's a kind of standard international, the plywood size. So this module of the truss is exactly at 8 feet on center. So it's 2,440 millimeters. That was intentional to, split the unit of construction into the actual construction. So it builds up actually. So it's a 2 feet tile. Two of them come to make one kernel unit, which is 4 feet, and two 4 feet units of kernel come to form 8 feet, right? 8 feet structural module. So everything is in kind of unison, relational. So this is the photo. So 8 feet module, exactly. So that unit of construction becomes a kind of experiential unit that is actually occupied by four people on a table. And this is kind of boring, so I'll just skip. And the final photo. And again, this is a similar project with similar mentality. So it's a permanent pavilion. You guys saw those kind of red, if you guys cross Han River, you guys know Park 1 building, the two twin towers by Richard Rogers. And in the Tower 2 lobby, I made a kind of permanent pavilion inside those lobby. And it's a Donghyuk Financial Headquarters tower in Yeouido. The lobby was kind of 12-meter height and marble floor, coarse glass curtain wall, polished surfaces of stainless steel, and very impressive, kind of high quality commercial space. But also a space people mostly just pass through, commercial lobby. The DNA of those the big building, high-rise tower lobbies always kind of underused space. So this project began from construction condition. The lobby was already finished and in daily use. And they asked, during the construction, before we actually even start the design, they asked no welding, no dust, financial headquarters. Yeah, no noise, no vibration, no punching of holes in the marble floor, my marble floor, no fire, and the entire installation time frame, the time window was only 4 days, like 2 weekends, Saturday, Sunday, dawn. You have to finish in 4 days. So I was, okay, but I'll try. So I made it. So actually, one could think this construction constraint, for design constraint as a kind of nightmare, but also, you can treat it as a design alibi or strategy. If nothing can be cut or welded on site, then everything has to arrive as finished parts, as simply, connect. The lower structure was made from modular timber frames, and the upper domes were made from tent poles, ready-made tent poles, actual tent poles. So I didn't invent the poles, I just used the tent poles to make the highest dome out of tent poles. So it's catalog parts on the left, So there's a connecting toys, connecting hardware already made for the tents, right? Tent manufacturer. So we work with the pole specialists from the company. I just call them to engineer the entire geometry. If you look at, it's kind of small, but the red ones are pre-bent poles in certain radius, and also the blue ones are just straight poles, and certain connectors. It's a 4.5 meter tall. It's quite high domes. Just dome itself is 4.5 meter high. So the highest one. So this is why I like ready-mades. Constrained naturally from the ready-made products or material, they already contains a certain amount of intelligence to make that as a product, right? The wood, the aluminum poles and all those. So I think architect's job is not always to invent new parts, right? In concrete manner, sometimes we are actually kind of forced to invent something, but I don't, in framework, I don't really think that is the normal case. Sometimes it is to just reorganize the existing knowledge. So one dome, the biggest one dome, 4 people, only half an hour of the time window. So only 4 people hold the corner of the 4 domes. So everything became a design outline to come to a decision that I have to use 10 poles, otherwise it will be pretty much heavy and people cannot lift it. And it had to be lifted through the ladder, not the lift of the mechanical equipment, just pure ladder. So I had to. Noise, no. So everything is in. So sorry for the noise, but everything was complicated parts, and I had to assemble one side. No, I didn't assemble, but they. I'm not the one of them. So finally, the final photos. This one is. Okay. 10 minutes. Give me 10 more minutes. I'll finish. This is the renovation of design, the library design. I did a really tiny project. Those kind of red portion. I filmed this project because framework is not just the kind of the material or the way of thinking. In this case, framework, I used it to control the construction of the hall. So this is a very old library in Gwangju. It opened in actually 1981, so very old building, and it certain number of years served as a city that represented the library, but they're building a new one. But they're kind of kicking out this guy. You're old and you're out. So new main library was being planned and actually being under construction. So this was almost a retiring building. The project began with a very small request. The city needed, the library needed to move 14 computers on the first floor to the second floor. You see this photos on the bottom left. So why did you guys call me? Oh, we have to move 14 computers to second floors. So what do I design? Oh, we don't know. We just need your advice. So I was like, okay. The budget was tiny, so it could have been almost just a kind of furniture replacement. Once the layout project, But I wanted to treat it as a kind of small experiment. So in most of the small interior construction, if you look at the proportion of the money where it goes, and it mostly poured into the labor. The smaller the project, the more you actually spend the money on labor, right? Oh, that's not good. So, this is like a sugar. Sugar cube, it just disappears after the project, the labor fee, right? So I want to actually use it more on the material itself because it will remain kind of permanently, right? So I decided to use this ready-made product, it's small furniture elements. In this project, because everything was standardized and dry assembled, so that I can minimize the labor cost, carpentry cost, basically. So less money went into the labor intensive kind of shaping. More money went into the material itself, into things people can actually, touch. So we measured. I basically went there and spent the whole day to measure resisting ceiling modules and grid and columns, and from that I found this magical number, 345 millimeter. It's very specific, right? But I came up with this module. It was a magical number, so it could actually accommodate everything existing ceiling modules and floor and column location and things like that. So here you see the word of 345 millimeter modules, and it's all kind of dry assembled ready-made product component. It was actually, this product is made for the small furnitures, but I use it to expand the entire entire space. So off the shelf, pipe and clamp furniture systems, parts, desk, partitions, display stands, different functions, but identical parts. This was just a whole project as a part list, pipes, connectors, and things like that. So parts make the whole, and the whole decides how the parts combine. So if you, for example, if I want to build the desk, and I use 2x3 modules, so 2 on the vertical side, which is 690 millimeters, and by 1045 millimeters on the other side. So that is perfect for the handicapped person's desk. So that became the module of one desk, which was actually supposed to move from the first floor. I throw away a very old desk and made it all new. Let's see the construction floor. Again, construction finished. Yeah, same. Yeah. So even the the display stand of the book is ready-made product. You just order it through Coupang or Amazon. Alibaba. Yeah. So first, I'll try to just go quickly on this page. It's a self-initiated project in our campus. It's for the student, it's for student, allow student to smoke under heavy rain, basically. They are dry and nicely enjoying smoking, either it's electrical or it's an actual very good service. It's a public good, right? So I actually also worked this as a design builder So I was the kind of general contractor for this project as well, and as well as a designer, architect. Building in myself taught me things no drawings ever had. When you layer real materials at full scale, you meet problems that drawings hide. A corner where water collects, a screw that cannot be reached, a flashing line that looks simple until rain actually arrives. I started saying this to myself. That corner condition, God made, the famous phrase that God may be in the detail, but the devil's in the corner. The corner details are kind of nightmare in every project. So, yeah, so when the first rain came, the water ran exactly where actually it was supposed to run. So, and stopped exactly where it was actually supposed to stop. So I felt something very simple for a moment. I felt the distance between the drawing and the building kind of, disappeared as a contractor, general contractor for this project. Now come back to the first law thing, and I already explained. So this due column of the pavilion are large blue lands, same species, exactly same species, of that abandoned large log. So young large and processed blue lab GLT and standardized, and this old log was large as well, right? As I talked about, so same species, different generation of material. So I made it the column base out of that log, and a younger piece of large standing on an older kind of mother. Older piece of large, one generation of material resting on one other, so that I can actually kind of represent the entire cycle of one material from a log, from the birth mother to the descendant of the GLTs. So almost like a child, right, standing on the mother's time. I know that sounds a little kind of weird, sentimental, but in the actual building, it is very simple. The material's path becomes visible in just one single vertical line. So tree, log, lumber, column, things like that. This is not only a detail, because in concrete form or a detail, you cannot. It's really hard to show the relationship. But I think to me, material and details are very relational. So one thing is connected to carry others' meaning. So that's why I really like the framework of thinking. So the details becomes not decoration of the form, but detail is a kind of decision itself. All right. I'll just close it here. Thank you.
It's quite, great lectures. Lots of inspiration for me. So, any questions for his film in frameworks? I like it. So, any questions?
Any questions? Any questions?
No, not really. Come on. Yeah, I have one question. Yeah. Compared to the formwork and framework, as I understand, as a framework means like a bottom-up process, rather than free given form. Instead of a free given form, you develop your form from you call it frames, like lots of different parts and join and kind of thing.
Right.
But when you do design as a like emergent kind of system or bottom-up process, easily fall into the chaos you're going to create. So you must have your own discipline to organize or control the process. For me, I mean, when you see your I don't know, the library or kind of
Yeah.
project, you must have your own discipline. What is your own discipline?
So I do actually believe that if you, I mean, my just ordinary process of design is heavy modeling because like writing 8 or 7. Yeah, I'm actually basically very heavy modeler, and I have to model basically digital model everything, and then in those kind of you know the work ethic, and I have my own standard of organizing all different layers and how I start the design, and design lines, construction lines, and 2D, 3D components, and that I actually came up with those systems not in just a single day, but it took a long time, more than decades of using Rhino as a main design tool. So that actually gives me a very calm settlement psychologically. So as long as I have those Rhino models in digital form, then everything files are in order as I develop the design, and I'm very good at organizing files and stuff like that. So that sometimes actually those very simple everyday practice, like let's call it best practice, it sounds very trivial, but it is really important, especially when it comes to those kind of emergency, like 911 situation, like firefighting, things like that. And I can always come back to the first file or first documentation that I could hold on to. So if I actually lose where I come from the first day, the original thoughts and ideas, then I cannot, I easily lost the track of my design. So I'll just, let's say, call it file management. I have a very simple answer, but
Okay, I guess, yeah.
Thanks for the lecture. I was really enjoying it. As a researcher and also researching in timber construction. And I have a question about like how do you see like the future of like timber construction in Korea? For example, there's like this space structure which which using robotic fabrication methods, for example.
Right.
And also like, so how do you see like how it's going to be? For example, like there's an apartment in Toronto and in Singapore.
Yeah.
It's going to be an apartment in Tibet. So it's kind of
10-story or something?
with a concrete core.
Right. Concrete core, the timber columns and beams and stuff like that. Yeah. I heard of it.
So how do you see the timber construction future?
I think eventually we're kind of lagging behind, and I'm serving as a Korea Ministry of Work Service, things like that. There are 5, committee members. I'm one of them, and then I'm actually seeing a lot of monies. The Salim Chung, the Korean Forestry Service, runs a lot of money. It's actually, I was shocked. Very fair amount of government fund. So they actually, it's not the 1970s. The situation is very analogous to 1970s when it comes to concrete construction. Nationally, they pour the money into the concrete construction for the fast delivery and everything, right? Fast construction. Boom, boom, boom. Like, not the quality, but just, quantity is driven by those national funds and, the urgencies. And certainly I see that happening right on my eye because I'm reviewing all those documents from all different, organizations related to Seoul-Incheon, the rainforest country. But still, I think it's really dangerous years. We already experienced in 1970s, government drive everything, and we now have, paradise of the apartments, right? And we were actually swallowed by those concrete construction already. We already experienced, and all those kind of started with those urgency. We have money, build. So they have speed, and we have to catch up. But all those documents are very, very lack of details, and many of them, almost all of them. So I'm very kind of nervous what to come, but certainly I know it's coming. So I'm just trying to. The reason I'm actually pulling this as a kind of opposite direction. Framework is good, but at the same time, the wood not just as the quantity or the material, but wood or timber frames as a kind of the thought, architectural thought or judgment. So if I answer to the question, I'm very nervous. Yeah, I know it's also I can look at the bright side, but still it's kind of nervous. Scary.
Okay, I have one more question. Yep, go ahead.
It's kind of to do with the digital fabrication a little bit, but the other side. You mentioned about how the sort of craftsmanship behind carpentry is lost a little bit with the sort of rapid modernization.
Right.
I was wondering if there's sort of any benefit or like space for that, the traditional sort of craftsmanship and carpentry connections, or if that's sort of lost a little bit in the CNC and digital fabrication.
Still, I think there's a lot of people, not a lot of people, but certain people in Korea, they are trying to kind of rebring those craftsmanship, traditional craftsmanship with digital technologies. And I also do think that is very important. Have those kind of translating attitude. And, of course, we're not trying to, celebrate the tradition as it is. It's kind of meaningless to me. But if we can kind of evolve and trying to come up with a new system, not just the design or the style, but system. If we can, come up with a new system that is using the modern, up-to-date technology of making those robotic arms and CNCs and stuff, it's worth looking at it, especially in academia. And so that it can, sometimes it's, a little bit more academic, it's not practical sometimes, but we have to push forward to, eventually some portion we could adapt it to ordinary timber construction so that it does not become just, wood painted concrete structure happening again.
Okay, cool. It's time to wrap up, and then don't do work too much and for tomorrow's medicine, right? Don't do overnight. Have a sleep and come back really fresh. Because anyway, you're gonna have after the instant break, and we quickly you guys have a unit trip around the city. So, be prepared your fresh things. Eat well and sleep well. Okay. Let's finish. 왜 저거 자동 번역 안 켰대? 에이씨.
That's right.